They gathered around his deathbed with tears in their eyes, but only one woman's tears were real. The others? They were already counting his billions. Before we begin, if you love stories where love is tested and truth always wins, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's dive in. Marcus Bentley had built an empire from dust. At 62, he owned half the commercial real estate in Lagos, a shipping fleet that crossed 3 continents, and a name that made boardrooms tremble. But tonight, lying in his king-sized bed in the master suite of his Ikoyi mansion, he wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about love, or rather, the absence of it. "How long do I have, doctor?" Marcus whispered, his voice deliberately weak. Dr. Adeyemi, his physician of 20 years, played along perfectly. 6 months. Maybe less. "The cancer has spread to your liver, Mr. Bentley." "I'm sorry." Marcus nodded slowly, his face a mask of resignation. But inside, his mind was sharp as ever. This wasn't cancer. This was a test. A final, desperate experiment to answer the question that had haunted him for 5 years. Which of his 3 wives actually loved him, and which ones were simply waiting for him to die? The plan had taken 2 months to orchestrate. Dr. Adeyemi and his lawyer, Chidi Okafor, were the only ones who knew the truth. Together, they'd fabricated medical reports, staged hospital visits, and even arranged for Marcus to lose weight deliberately, 15 kilograms in 8 weeks through controlled fasting that made him look genuinely ill. "The cameras are all in place," Chidi had confirmed 3 days ago. "Every room. We'll see everything they do when they think you're not watching." Now, as Marcus lay in his bed waiting for his wives to arrive, he felt a strange mixture of dread and curiosity. He'd married 3 times, not because he was a playboy, but because life had complicated his heart in ways money could never fix. Ruth was his first wife, married 35 years ago when he was nobody. She was 58 now, a mathematics teacher's daughter who'd sold her mother's jewelry to help him buy his first property. They'd built everything together, survived poverty, buried 2 miscarriages, and weathered storms that would have destroyed weaker partnerships. But then he'd made a terrible mistake. 15 years ago, drunk on success and terrible advice from so-called friends, Marcus had taken a second wife, Lillian. She was 43 now, a corporate lawyer with ice in her veins and ambition in her DNA. Beautiful, brilliant, and utterly strategic. She'd given him 1 son, Daniel, who was now 14 and studying abroad. Then came Nancy, the mistake he'd made 5 years ago during a moment of weakness at a business conference in Dubai. She was 28, younger than his oldest daughter from Ruth. Nancy was an events planner with expensive tastes and an Instagram feed that cost him tens of thousands monthly. No children, just endless shopping trips and a lifestyle that screamed trophy wife. "Mr. Bentley, they're coming up now," his butler announced softly from the doorway. Marcus closed his eyes and let his breathing become shallow. Showtime. The door opened, and he heard the rustle of fabric, the click of heels, the sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God." Nancy's voice came first, high-pitched and trembling. Is he dying right now?" "The doctor said we should prepare ourselves." Ruth's voice followed, steady but thick with emotion. "Come, let's sit with him." Marcus kept his eyes closed, listening to them arrange themselves around his bed. Through his barely open lids, he could see them. Ruth sat closest, her hand immediately finding his. Her palm was warm, slightly rough from years of gardening, a hobby she'd kept despite having staff to do it. Nancy stood near the foot of the bed, her designer dress impeccable, her face a mask of shock. Lillian positioned herself by the window, arms crossed, her lawyer's mind already calculating. "How long?" Lillian asked, her voice clinical. Dr. Adeyemi said maybe 6 months, Ruth answered, her thumb stroking the back of Marcus's hand. "Maybe less." Silence fell over the room like a burial shroud. Marcus could feel the weight of their thoughts, the churning of their private calculations. This was the moment. This was when he'd see their true hearts. "I should call Daniel," Lillian said finally. "He needs to come home from school." "Not yet," Ruth said gently. "Let's not disrupt his studies unless we have to." "Studies?" Lillian's voice sharpened. "His father is dying, Ruth. He has a right to know. I'm just saying we should wait a few days. The boy is taking his exams." Marcus felt Nancy's hand suddenly grip his foot through the blanket. "This can't be happening," she whispered. We were supposed to go to the Maldives next month. The villa is already booked. Ruth's hand tightened on his. Nancy, please. I'm just saying. He was fine last week. How does someone just get cancer overnight? It doesn't happen overnight, Lillian cut in. He's probably been hiding it for months. Typical Marcus, shouldering everything alone, not trusting anyone. The barb landed exactly where Lillian intended. Marcus heard Ruth's sharp breath, felt her hand tremble slightly. Even now, Lillian was taking shots, reminding Ruth that Marcus had married other women. That trust had been broken long ago. I'm going to call Pastor Williams, Ruth said quietly, standing up. We need to pray. Prayer, Lillian scoffed. What we need is to review his medical options. I'm calling that specialist in Houston. As Ruth left the room, Marcus heard Nancy follow her, heels clicking rapidly. Ruth, wait, do you think he's updated his will recently? Marcus's heart sank. 5 minutes. It had taken 5 minutes for the vultures to start circling. Through the hidden cameras, Chitty and Dr. Adeyemi were watching everything from the study downstairs. Tomorrow, they'd review the footage together. But Marcus already knew what he'd see. He could feel it in the air, in the way Lillian's presence felt like a corporate takeover, in the way Nancy's concern seemed more about canceled vacations than canceled futures. Only Ruth's touch had felt real. Only Ruth's hand had held his like she was trying to pour life back into him through her palm. As darkness settled over Lagos and his mansion filled with whispered conversations, Marcus Bentley lay perfectly still, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. He was dying, they believed. But really, he was just learning to see clearly for the first time in years. The test had begun, and somewhere in this house, hidden cameras were recording every truth his wives thought he'd never discover. The next 72 hours revealed everything Marcus needed to know, and broke his heart in ways money could never repair. From his bed, he maintained his dying man performance flawlessly. Shallow breathing, occasional groans, barely touching his food. Dr. Adeyemi visited daily, shaking his head gravely while slipping Marcus vitamin injections to keep his strength up. Meanwhile, the cameras captured what happened when his wives thought he couldn't see. Ruth's routine never changed. Every morning at 6, she'd enter his room with a basin of warm water and a soft towel. She'd wash his face gently, talking to him even though he appeared unconscious. Remember when we lived in that one-room apartment in Suralere? She'd whisper, wiping his forehead. You'd come home exhausted from construction sites, and I'd massage your shoulders until you fell asleep. We had nothing, Marcus. Nothing but each other. And we were happy. She'd sit beside him for hours, reading her Bible aloud, praying with a fervor that made her voice crack. Lord, if you're listening, please give us more time. Not because I need his money. I needed him when he had nothing. I need him now because he's the only man I've ever loved. At night, when she thought everyone was asleep, Ruth would pull out old photo albums from a drawer in his study. The cameras caught her crying over pictures of them from 30 years ago, young, broke, and ridiculously in love. Marcus in his threadbare suit. Ruth in her simple wedding dress that cost less than Nancy's weekly manicure budget. Chitty had called Marcus on the secure line they'd set up. Boss, you need to see this footage of Ruth. She's not performing for anyone. She's genuinely devastated. But if Ruth's loyalty was the light, Lillian's ambition was the shadow. The cameras in the study caught her the very next morning after the diagnosis, sitting at Marcus's desk with his laptop open. She'd somehow guessed his password, their son Daniel's birth date combined with their wedding anniversary. Classic Lillian. Always 3 steps ahead. Johnson, it's Lillian Bentley. She spoke into her phone, her voice brisk and businesslike. I need you to prepare documents for an emergency board meeting at Bentley Holdings. My husband is incapacitated, and as a major shareholder, I'm invoking Clause 17 of the company charter. Marcus's blood had run cold watching the playback. Clause 17. The provision that allowed shareholders to vote in interim leadership during the CEO's extended medical absence. Lillian wasn't waiting for him to die. She was executing a corporate coup while he was still breathing. The footage continued. Lillian met with 3 board members at a restaurant downtown. The cameras couldn't follow her there, but her phone calls afterward told the story. Yes, I know it seems aggressive, she told someone, probably her lawyer friend, Christine. But Bentley Holdings needs strong leadership. Ruth is a housewife. Nancy is a child. And Marcus is dying. Someone has to take control before everything falls apart. She'd paused, then added with chilling pragmatism. Daniel will inherit eventually, but he's 14. I'm his mother. I'll manage his shares until he's old enough. That gives me effective control of 45% of the company. With the board votes I've secured, I'll have operational control within 2 weeks. Dr. Adeyemi had visited Marcus that evening, shaking his head as they reviewed the footage. She's not even pretending to be sad. She never loved me, Marcus said quietly. She loved what I could give her. Position, status, a seat at tables she couldn't reach on her own. But Nancy's betrayal was somehow worse because it was so stupid, so reckless, so utterly predictable. The cameras in the guest house, a luxury cottage at the edge of the property, caught everything. 2 days after Marcus's diagnosis, while Ruth prayed and Lillian plotted, Nancy brought a man home. His name was Trevor, 25 years old, personal trainer. Abs that probably had their own Instagram account. The footage showed Nancy leading him through the garden path at midnight, giggling like a teenager. "Won't your husband notice?" Trevor asked, his arm around her waist. Nancy waved dismissively. "Marcus? Please. He's basically a corpse already. And anyway, the old man barely comes to my wing of the house anymore. He's too busy playing happy family with Ruth." They'd disappeared into the guest house. The bedroom camera, Marcus felt sick having it there, but Chitty had insisted on complete coverage, showed exactly what he expected. Betrayal in high definition. But worse than the affair was the conversation after. "So when he dies, how much do you get?" Trevor asked, sprawled across Nancy's bed. Nancy laughed, running her fingers through his hair. "Honestly, I don't know. But this house alone is worth $50 million. And he's got properties everywhere. Even if I only get 10%, we're talking serious money, baby." Trevor raised an eyebrow. "Well, obviously I can't stay in this family after," Nancy said, as if explaining something simple to a child. "Too many rules. Too much tradition. Ruth will want me to wear black for a year like some village widow. No thanks. I'm thinking we take the money and move to Dubai. You can open that gym you always talk about." "What about his kids?" Nancy shrugged. "They're Ruth's problem. I'm 28, Trev. I'm not spending my best years playing stepmother to grown adults who hate me anyway." Marcus had stopped the playback there. He'd seen enough. Chitty arrived at the mansion on the 3rd night with a legal team. "Boss, we have everything we need. Ruth is clean. She hasn't made a single suspicious move. But Lillian is trying to steal your company, and Nancy is literally planning her escape with your money. What do you want to do?" Marcus sat up in bed, no longer pretending, at least not in private. His face was hard, his eyes cold with the same ruthlessness that had built his empire. "Rewrite the will," he said. "Everything goes to Ruth. The company, the properties, every single account. Lillian gets a severance package, enough to live comfortably, but nothing close to what she was planning. Nancy gets nothing, not 1 naira. And I want both marriages legally dissolved." "What about Daniel?" Chitty asked carefully. Marcus's face softened slightly. "Set up a trust for my son. He'll get his inheritance when he turns 25, but Lillian doesn't control it. Ruth does. She's the only one I trust." "And Franklin?" Dr. Adeyemi asked, referring to Marcus's oldest son from Ruth. "Franklin gets his share as planned. He's worked honestly in the business for 10 years. He's earned it." Chitty nodded, making notes. "When do you want to reveal the truth?" Marcus looked at the monitor showing live feeds from around his house. Ruth was in the chapel, on her knees, praying. Lillian was on her laptop, probably drafting more corporate takeover plans. Nancy was texting someone, probably Trevor, with a smile on her face. "Tomorrow," Marcus said. "I've seen enough. It's time they see me." That night, Marcus slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. The cameras had done their job. The truth was captured, undeniable, time-stamped, and devastating. Tomorrow, the dead man would rise. And when he did, 3 women would learn that some tests you can't cheat on, some cameras you can't hide from, and some betrayals you can't undo. Marcus chose Sunday morning for his resurrection. Ruth would be in the chapel. Lillian would be reviewing documents. Nancy would be sleeping off whatever late-night scheming she'd done. Perfect timing for the performance of his lifetime. Except this time, the truth would be his script. "Are we ready?" Marcus asked Chitty, buttoning a crisp white shirt. He'd gained back 3 kilograms in the past week through proper meals taken secretly in Dr. Adeyemi's office during his medical visits. He looked healthy, Strong. Very much alive. The lawyers are in the conference room. The screens are set up. And I've asked all 3 of your wives to meet you in the main lounge at 10 o'clock. Ruth thinks it's for a family prayer. Lillian thinks it's about business continuity. Nancy thinks you're announcing your funeral arrangements. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. But there was no humor in what he was about to do. Only justice. At exactly 10 o'clock, Marcus walked into the main lounge. The look on their faces was worth every moment of the elaborate charade. Nancy screamed. Actually screamed, jumping back like she'd seen a ghost. Her phone clattered to the marble floor. Lillian's face went white, then red, her lawyer's composure cracking like cheap porcelain. What? How? But Ruth. Ruth's hand flew to her mouth, tears instantly streaming down her face. Marcus? Oh God, Marcus! She rushed forward, grabbing him, touching his face, his arms, checking if he was real. The doctor said, "We thought." "I know what you thought," Marcus said gently, taking Ruth's hands. "Sit down, all of you. We need to talk." "This is insane," Lillian snapped, recovering her voice. "You faked a terminal illness? Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" "Oh, I have every idea," Marcus replied, his voice cold now. "Chitty, start the presentation." The massive screen on the wall flickered to life. Nancy's face appeared first, timestamp clear in the corner. Her voice filled the room. "Marcus? Please. He's basically a corpse already." Nancy's actual face went from confused to horrified as she watched herself on screen with Trevor. The bedroom footage. The conversation about money. Her plans to run to Dubai. "Turn it off," Nancy whispered. "Please, turn it off." "No," Marcus said. "You wanted my money? Then you'll watch every second of how you plan to spend it." The footage played mercilessly. Nancy and Trevor's affair in full display. Her laughing about Marcus being a corpse. Her calculations about percentages and properties. Her complete indifference to his children. By the time it ended, Nancy was sobbing, mascara running black rivers down her face. "I can explain." "Don't." Marcus cut her off. "There's more." Lillian's footage came next. Her breaking into his laptop. Her phone calls arranging the corporate coup. Her cold assessment that Ruth was just a housewife, that Marcus was dying anyway, that someone had to take control. "I was protecting the company," Lillian said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You were dying. Someone had to." "I wasn't dying," Marcus thundered. "But you couldn't even wait for my body to get cold before you started dividing my empire. You didn't call Daniel because you cared about his education. You called him because you needed time to consolidate power before he came home and realized what you were doing." Lillian's jaw clenched. "I built that company alongside you." "No," Marcus corrected. "You married into it 15 years ago. Ruth built it with me. Ruth sold her mother's jewelry to help me buy my first property when you were still in law school dreaming of corner offices." Then came Ruth's footage. The morning rituals. The washing. The prayers. The photo albums. Her voice cracking as she begged God for more time. Not for money, but for love. Ruth watched herself on screen, tears falling silently. She looked embarrassed, vulnerable, exposed in her private grief. Marcus reached over and took her hand. "You're the only one who passed," he said softly. "The only one." "Passed?" Ruth looked confused. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" "I installed cameras everywhere," Marcus explained. "I needed to know the truth. I needed to see what happened when I wasn't watching, when you all thought I couldn't hear or judge or remember." He stood, addressing all 3 women now. "Lillian, you'll receive a severance package. 5 million naira. Enough to live comfortably, but you're removed from all company positions effective immediately. Our marriage will be annulled on grounds of fraud and abandonment of marital duties. Daniel's inheritance is secured in a trust that Ruth will manage until he's 25. Lillian's face turned to stone. "You can't do this." "I already have. The lawyers are in the conference room with the paperwork. You can sign voluntarily, or we can do this in court with all the footage as evidence. Your choice." He turned to Nancy. "You get nothing. Our marriage is annulled. You have 72 hours to move out of this property. Trevor is welcome to help you pack." Nancy collapsed into sobs. "Please, Marcus, I made a mistake." "You made a choice," Marcus corrected. "Every night you brought that man into my home. Every conversation where you calculated my worth while I was supposedly dying. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions." "And Ruth," Marcus said, turning to his first wife, his voice finally softening. Everything else is yours. The company, the properties, every account. You're the new CEO of Bentley Holdings. Ruth's eyes went wide. Marcus, I can't run a company. I'm a teacher's daughter who gardens. You're the woman who believed in me when I had nothing. Marcus interrupted. You're the person who stayed loyal when loyalty cost you everything. You think running a company requires business degrees. It requires character, integrity, the ability to see people, really see them. You have all of that. He pulled out a document from his jacket. I'm retiring, Ruth. The business is yours. Franklin will be your deputy. He's earned it. But you'll be CEO. You'll set the culture. You'll build the legacy. Ruth stared at the papers, then at Marcus, then at the screen still frozen on an image of her praying. You watched me, she whispered. You installed cameras and watched me grieve. Ruth stared at the papers, then at Marcus, then at the screen still frozen on an image of her praying. You watched me, she whispered. You installed cameras and watched me grieve. I did, Marcus admitted. And I'm sorry. I invaded your privacy, manipulated your emotions, made you suffer when you'd done nothing wrong. It was cruel, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. But Ruth, I had to know. After 2 failed marriages, after years of doubting myself, I had to know if real love still existed in my life. And? Ruth asked, her voice barely audible. You're my answer, Marcus said simply. You always were. Lillian stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble. This is ridiculous. I'm calling my lawyer. Already did. Chitty spoke up from the corner. Christine reviewed the footage. She advised you to take the settlement. Lillian's face cycled through rage, humiliation, and finally cold acceptance. Fine. 5 million. But Daniel deserves more. Daniel will get more, Marcus assured her. When he's old enough to manage it wisely. Under Ruth's guidance, he'll learn what real wealth means. Not just money, character. Nancy tried one last time. Marcus, please, I'm sorry. But Marcus had already turned away. Security entered the room on cue. Please escort Ms. Nancy to her quarters and supervise her packing. Lillian, the legal team is waiting for you in the conference room. As they left, Lillian with her head high and her ambitions crushed, Nancy sobbing and stumbling. The room fell quiet. Ruth stood alone with Marcus, staring at the papers in her hand. I don't know if I can forgive you for the cameras, she said honestly. You made me think you were dying. You let me pray and cry and grieve when you were fine. I know, Marcus said, and I don't expect immediate forgiveness. But Ruth, I'm giving you everything, not as payment, but as recognition. You're the only one who loved me when love was all we had. Now love is all I want. Ruth looked at him for a long moment. This man she'd married 35 years ago in a borrowed church with a cake that cost 20 naira. He was older now, wealthier, more cynical. But underneath, she could still see the young man who'd promised her forever. No more tests, she said firmly. No more cameras. No more wives. Just us. Like it was supposed to be. Marcus nodded. Just us. I promise. Ruth took a deep breath, then looked at the CEO appointment papers. I'll do it, she said. But we're changing things, Marcus. The company culture. The values. Everything. If I'm in charge, we're building something that honors people, not just profits. That's exactly why I chose you, Marcus replied. Outside, Lagos hummed with its usual chaos. Inside Bentley Holdings, a new chapter was beginning. Ruth took her place as CEO the following Monday. Franklin stood beside her, proud and loyal. And Marcus? He finally retired, content to watch his true legacy, not money, but love, continue to grow. The cameras were dismantled. The test was over. And for the first time in 15 years, Marcus Bentley slept beside the only woman who'd ever truly seen him. Not his wallet, not his empire, but his heart. Love isn't proven in grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's proven in quiet prayers, gentle hands, and loyalty when no one's watching. Marcus learned what many wealthy men forget, that the richest inheritance isn't money, but someone who stays when staying costs everything. Ruth didn't love a billionaire. She loved a man. And in the end, that's the only wealth that truly multiplies. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember that real love can't be bought, only earned. This is Elmerem Stories, where love teaches us what money never can. Don't forget to hit the subscription button and click on the next video for more stories like this.